Just eat something, you're being ridiculous. That's what my husband said while I was on my knees on the kitchen floor holding on to the cabinet door because my legs had stopped working. Not slipped, not cramped, stopped. It was a Sunday in October, Thanksgiving weekend. His parents were upstairs. His sister was upstairs. I could hear them laughing about something, the clinking of glasses, the smell of the turkey his mother had insisted on bringing already cooked from her house in Oakville because apparently my oven ran too hot. I had been fine that morning. I had set the table. I had made the cranberry sauce from scratch because he liked the texture better than the canned kind. And then I went to get more napkins from the lower cabinet and my legs just weren't there anymore. He walked into the kitchen and saw me on the floor, and the first thing he did was look toward the hallway to make sure nobody had followed him in. That was the moment. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment everything started to make sense in the worst possible way. His name was Marcus. We had been together for 6 years, married for 3. I was 31. I worked as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm in Hamilton, Ontario. I made decent money. Not great. $62,000 a year, but enough. We had a semi-detached house on a quiet street near the escarpment. We had a dog, a 7-year-old beagle named Biscuit, who slept at the foot of the bed and snored like an old man. From the outside, and mostly from the inside too, it looked like a good life. The symptoms had started in July. That's what I kept telling the doctors, and that's what they kept writing down and then seeming to forget. July. It started with tingling, in my feet mostly, sometimes in my hands. I thought it was how I was sitting at my desk, so I got one of those ergonomic footrests and switched to a standing desk converter. The tingling didn't go away. By August, I was getting headaches that felt like pressure rather than pain, like something squeezing from the inside out. I went to my GP, Dr. Nwakaku, who ordered blood work. Everything came back in normal range. She suggested maybe stress. She suggested maybe I was grinding my teeth at night. She referred me to a physiotherapist. Marcus came to that appointment. He was very good in appointments. He would sit in the chair beside me and nod at the right times and say things like, "She's been under a lot of pressure at work, and I've been worried about her too." He held my hand in the waiting room. The physiotherapist said my posture was slightly off and gave me exercises. By September, I had dropped a full mug of coffee because my grip just released. Not shaking, not weakness exactly, my hand simply opened. It scared me enough that I called the GP line after hours. The on-call nurse asked me a series of questions and told me to follow up if it happened again, and to go to the ER if I had facial drooping or slurred speech. I didn't have those things. I had other things. I had days where the fatigue was so heavy that getting off the couch felt like lifting something. I had moments where my vision blurred at the edges, not like needing glasses, more like someone had smudged the corners of what I was looking at. I had a weird taste sometimes, metallic, faint, that I kept attributing to the iron supplements I had started taking. I mentioned the taste to Marcus once. He said, "I've never noticed anything weird with the food." That's not what I had said. I hadn't said anything about the food. I thought about that later. I thought about it a lot. In October, I saw a neurologist through referral. By the time I got the appointment, I'd been waiting 6 weeks, which is not unusual in Ontario and also is completely maddening when you don't know what's wrong with your body. The neurologist was kind. She was thorough. She ordered an MRI and more blood work and a nerve conduction study. She said it could be a number of things, that she didn't want to speculate, that we would know more once the results came back. Marcus drove me home from that appointment. He asked what she had said. I told him she didn't know yet. He said, "I really think it might just be anxiety. You've always been kind of high-strung." I looked out the window at the highway and didn't say anything. I was trying to remember if I had always been high-strung or if that was something that had started being said about me at some point and I had just accepted it. The Thanksgiving weekend floor incident was 4 days before I was supposed to get my MRI results. His mother came into the kitchen 20 minutes after he did. By then, I had managed to get myself up using the cabinet and the counter and was sitting on one of the kitchen stools. My legs were working again, mostly the way they had been working. Not fully right, but functional enough to fake normal. She looked at me and said, "You look pale." I said I wasn't feeling great. She said, "You should eat more." "You don't eat enough, that's the problem." Marcus, from across the kitchen, said nothing. His sister came in later and asked if I was okay, and I said I was fine, and she gave me a look that I now understand was not skepticism, but actual concern that she didn't know how to voice in that family. Her name was Bridget. She was 2 years younger than Marcus, and she had always been a bit distant with me. Not unkind, just contained. I understand why now. The days after Thanksgiving were bad. Not dramatically bad. I didn't fall again. I didn't go to the ER. They were bad the way prolonged uncertainty is bad, which is quietly and persistently. I went to work. I sat at my desk. I answered emails. I went to the bathroom when the tingling got too distracting, and I sat on the closed lid of the toilet and breathed until it passed, and then I went back to my desk. I didn't tell my coworkers. I didn't tell my mother, who lived in Sudbury and who would have driven down immediately and hovered in a way that, at the time, I thought would make things worse. I should have called her. I know that now. The MRI results appointment was on a Wednesday. I went alone because Marcus had a site meeting he said he couldn't reschedule. Dr. Nuwakaku called me in, not the neurologist, which I found strange, and she had a look on her face I recognized from the time she had told me my aunt had a serious diagnosis. She sat down across from me and said that the MRI had come back largely clear, which was good, but that some of the blood panels had flagged something unusual, and the lab had requested a rerun. She asked me a series of questions. Had I changed my diet significantly? Was I taking any new supplements or herbal products? Had I been exposed to anything unusual at work? Chemicals? Solvents? Did anyone else in my household have access to the supplements I was taking? I said, "Why would you ask that?" She said, "The rerun came back the same. There are elevated levels of something in your system that we need to investigate further." She didn't say the word then. She used the clinical language. She said, "Heavy metal contamination," and she said, "The source is unclear." And she said, "We'd like to refer you to a specialist and also suggest you speak to someone at public health." I drove home. I sat in the car in the driveway for a long time. When I went inside, Marcus was already home. He was making pasta. He asked how the appointment went. I said the doctor had found something in my blood and wanted to investigate further. He said, "Like what?" I said they thought it might be some kind of contamination. He said, "From where?" He was stirring the pasta. He didn't turn around. I said I didn't know yet. I said they had questions about whether it could have come from home. He turned around then. He said, "That's a pretty serious accusation." I said I hadn't accused anyone of anything. He said, "It sounds like you're implying something." He put the spoon down on the counter. Not hard, not aggressively, just down. He said, "I think you're latching onto this because it's easier than accepting that your body is doing something your brain can't explain, and that's actually a really common psychological response to health anxiety." I had heard variations of this for 4 months. The remarkable thing about hearing it at that moment, when I had just sat in a parking lot trying to process the words heavy metal contamination, was how smoothly it came out of him. No hesitation. Like it had been prepared. I called my mother that night from my car. She drove down the next morning. What happened over the following 2 weeks is both very simple and very hard to describe. The specialist confirms that I had been exposed to thallium over an extended period. Not enough at any one time to cause acute poisoning, but enough accumulated to explain every symptom I had been dismissing since July. Thallium is not something you encounter by accident in a suburban Hamilton house. It is not in the water. It is not in off-brand supplements or in the paint on older walls. The public health officer was very careful and very clear about this when she spoke to me. She said, "We need to talk about where you keep your food and how your meals are prepared and whether there is anyone who might have had both access and motivation." My mother was sitting beside me during that conversation. She reached over and took my hand and didn't say anything. She's not a demonstrative person, my mother. She's from a small town north of Sudbury, and she expresses love through actions more than words. Through driving 5 hours without being asked and sitting in plastic chairs in government offices. Her taking my hand meant more than most speeches would have. The thing about thallium is that it has to come from somewhere. It's used in some industrial processes and in certain kinds of pest control products that have been largely phased out. It's not something you find by accident. The investigator from the Hamilton Police Service who came to our house, a quiet woman named Constable Ferreira, who wore a fleece over her uniform shirt because our house was cold, and she apologized for it. Explained this to me in the same even tone she used for everything. She asked me to walk her through Marcus's work. He was a project manager for an industrial equipment company. He had access, through his work and through vendors his company dealt with, to things that most people never touched. She asked me about the tea. I had forgotten about the tea. Or rather, I had not thought about it as a thing to mention because it had been so ordinary. Marcus had started making me a cup of tea every evening around 8 o'clock sometime in the spring. He made it in a particular mug, a blue ceramic one I had bought at a market in Stratford the year we got together. He said it was his way of doing something nice because I was always stressed. I had thought it was sweet. And this is the part that takes the longest to say out loud, I had thought it meant things were getting better between us. Constable Ferreira wrote this down. She didn't change her expression. She asked if the mug was still in the house. It was. It was in the cabinet. I don't know all the details of what happened after that because some of it is still working through the courts, and my lawyer, a methodical and slightly intimidating woman named Ms. Okafor, has advised me to be careful about what I discuss publicly. What I can say is that Marcus was arrested. What I can say is that evidence was found. What I can say is that when Bridget, his sister, found out, she called me. She was crying. She said she had noticed things. Small things, nothing she had known how to name, and that she was sorry she hadn't said anything sooner. I told her there was nothing she could have said that would have made me believe it. That was true. I wouldn't have. The house is mine. This is the part people always want to know about. The practical part, the money part. Because money matters. It matters a lot, and anyone who tells you it doesn't has never tried to restart their life at 31 while managing a chronic health condition that was deliberately inflicted on them. Our mortgage was joint. The legal process around the separation and the pending criminal charges has been complicated. But Ms. Okafor has been thorough, and the outcome, so far, has been as fair as it's possible to get in a situation that was never fair to begin with. The house is mine. My name on the deed. The joint accounts have been settled. I have what I need to move forward. Biscuit is mine too, obviously. He was always more mine. My mother stayed with me for 6 weeks. She cooked. She drove me to appointments. She watched British crime dramas with me on the couch in the evenings without commenting on the irony. She went back to Sudbury in December and called me every morning at 8 o'clock. Just to talk. Just to check in. Not in an anxious, hovering way, but in the way she shows love, which is by showing up even when she doesn't know what to say. The treatment for thallium exposure is slow. It's not like an infection where you take something and in 2 weeks you feel better. It is months. It is eating correctly and resting correctly and doing the physiotherapy correctly and being patient with your own body even when patience is the last thing you have. I learned to pay attention to the difference between a bad symptom day and a normal day and a good day. I started to have more good days. By February, I had walked to the coffee shop at the end of my street and back without stopping to grip something. By March, I had gone back to the office 3 days a week. My coworkers made a fuss. I cried a little in the bathroom afterward, not from sadness exactly, more from the relief of being somewhere ordinary again. I think about the tea a lot. I think about how I stood at the kitchen counter in the spring, thinking he was being kind, and I held the blue mug with both hands the way you do when you want to feel the warmth, and I drank it. Every evening. For months. There is no greeting card for that. I have looked, in a dark humor kind of way. Nothing in the Hallmark aisle at Shoppers Drug Mart covers your husband poisoned you slowly and called it love. You have to write that one yourself. So that's what I'm doing. Writing it myself, setting it down somewhere outside of my own head. Not because I need people to feel sorry for me. I don't. I'm genuinely okay. More okay than I expected to be. But because I think about all the times I sat in a waiting room or a parking lot or on the closed lid of a bathroom toilet at work and told myself I was probably overreacting, that it was probably nothing, that the people around me who said, "You're fine, you're anxious, you're high-strung," probably knew something I didn't. They didn't. You know your body. You know when something is wrong. And the fact that the people who are supposed to love you most are the loudest voices telling you to ignore what you know, that's not love. That's something else entirely. It took me a long time to understand the difference. I understand it now. Biscuit is asleep on my feet as I write this. The house is quiet. Outside, it's March in Hamilton, which means gray and cold and the specific kind of mud that comes when the snow finally gives up. But the light is coming back. Every day, a few more minutes of it. I notice that now in a way I didn't before. The light coming back, the days getting longer, the slow and ordinary return of things. I'll take it. I keep coming back to the mug. The blue ceramic one from the Stratford market. I thought it was a gesture of care. Him making tea every evening, handing it to me warm, me holding it with both hands the way you do when you want to feel something good. I was so grateful for it. That's the part that takes the longest to sit with. There's a kind of cause and effect to what happened that I've had to be honest about. Not to punish myself, but to actually understand it. Marcus didn't become who he turned out to be overnight. Looking back now, I can see the smaller moments, the way he would speak for me in appointments, the way high-strung became a word attached to my name, so gradually I stopped questioning it. The way my own observations about my body were consistently handed back to me as evidence of anxiety rather than evidence of anything real. The harm built slowly, because I let the doubt build slowly too. That's not blame. That's just what happened. What I've learned, and I mean really learned, not the version of learning that sounds good in a sentence, but the version that lives in your body, is that knowing yourself clearly is the first protection you have. Not paranoia, not suspicion of everyone around you. Just the basic, grounded ability to say, this is what I am observing, this is what I know to be true, and I am not going to hand that over to someone else to reinterpret. I didn't have that clearly enough, I do now. I also think about the people who did help. Dr. Nuwahu, who kept running tests even when nothing obvious showed up. Constable Ferreira, who asked the right questions without flinching. Miss Okafor, who was methodical and relentless and not particularly warm but exactly what I needed. My mother, who drove 5 hours without being asked. None of them did anything dramatic. They just did their jobs with integrity, and in doing so, they changed what happened to me. That matters to me. The idea that doing the right thing, even quietly, even just by asking one more question or making one more phone call, can be the difference for someone else. I try to carry that. The recovery has asked things of me I didn't know I had. There were mornings in November when the fatigue was so complete, I couldn't see the point of the effort, and I got up anyway. Not because I felt strong. Because I had decided to. That's a different thing, I think. Strength that comes from deciding rather than feeling. You decide to take the 5 steps, and then the 12, and then the length of the hallway. You decide to go back to work, even though you cried in the bathroom afterward. You decide to write it down even when you're not sure anyone needs to read it. The deciding is its own kind of muscle. It gets easier the more you use it. If I could say one thing to someone sitting in a parking lot right now, trying to make sense of symptoms that the people around them keep explaining away, it would be this. The discomfort of trusting yourself is much smaller than the cost of not doing it. That's it. That's the whole thing I learned, the long and expensive and painful way. Biscuit is still snoring at the foot of the bed. The light is still coming back. March in Hamilton is still gray and cold and quietly, stubbornly, turning into something else. So am I.